When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 14. She learned the true meaning of in sickness and in health. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce a brave guest. Her name is Mary Volunteeru. Mary continues to work in the healthcare field. With her earlier days in administrative roles, she has worked her way upwards and now holds the Quality Improvement Manager position at an established family health team in Ontario. Mary holds a bachelor's in health sciences degree with a minor in psychology. In her current role, she looks for improvement opportunities in the healthcare sector, including the delivery of patient programs to adapt to the current times, such as pandemic planning, without impairing quality of service delivery. Mary is a hardworking, caring, and often she likes to lend a helping hand to anyone who needs it. She gives back to the community in various ways, such as donating her blood and other volunteering endeavors. If Mary is not spending time with her family or husband, she can be found playing retro video games like Nintendo, experimenting with new recipes, shout singing to pop music, going to concerts, and traveling so she can experiment and taste new foods. She's also an adrenaline seeker who has skydived, done the CN Tower edge walk, and is always looking for a new adventure. Well, no wonder she has dared herself to be here today. Mary, welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so super excited and honored to be asked to be on the show today.
Mary, it's so great to have you on the show. And I appreciate so very much the willingness that you bring with you and this idea that you're supporting me and in this venture and the support for just taking a stance to help break down barriers of mental stigma. It means so much. So as you know, Mary, this podcast is about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it's directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter the story, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way, which remains buried away or shoved aside. So this platform serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So our presence together, Mary, I hope, is really encouraging people to share and tell what individuals typically have reluctance for disclosing. And of course, I'm passionate about bringing forward a trend of my own. It's called the mental beauty rethink. How do you feel about this trend?
Love it, and I've already experienced it.
Thanks. That's awesome. Let's get this conversation started. Mary, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story.
That's a good question. I would say something along the lines of love conquers all. A wife's wedding vows tested with cancer.
Love conquers all. A wife's wedding vows tested with cancer.
Yes.
Okay, well, now this is an interesting title. What does this title mean to you? What does this headline mean to you?
I think this headliner really gives you a glimpse of who I am as a person. If you've gotten to know me, you know I'm a person who is really committed in my decisions, in my visions, in my work, in my relationships. And so in my relationships, I'm a person that will give my all and everything that I have. So I stand true to my word because I do believe that my word is my bond. So this really applies to our marriage vows. I vowed to be by my husband Andre's side through sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, and to love him every day of my life. And I chose to do just that in this cancer journey and every day.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for expanding on that and sharing all of the unfolding of what the headline means to you. So, Mary, tell us what your untold story is all about. Let's get into it. Tell me about the who's and the what's and the when's and the where's.
Okay. So I'll begin with, I guess, with our love story. Andre and I were high school sweethearts. You know, even though we were at different high schools, we went to prom together. We had our first kiss. We were our first like boyfriend, girlfriend. And, you know, we started the online dating, ICQ at the time, you know, Wonderland meetups during the summer. But my parents were very, very strict. And once they found out, we had to put an end to it and focus on university. So we both went our ways, you know, finishing our education, building our careers, but we still thought of each other and like thought of, well, you know, what could have been. Eventually we reconnected and we began our lives together. You know, 2 years of dating, then he proposed, and then, you know, 2 years of wedding planning, we got married. And then once we were married, then 2 years we got a house. We started living together, traveling. We were living our best lives. And then 2 years after marriage, our love story turned into a completely different direction. So before I dive into the climactic part of the love story, I wanted to give you some background in my upbringing because it played a huge role in how Andre and I pushed through this cancer journey. So both of our parents were immigrants. They left from their communist countries for a better life. And they came over to Canada not speaking the language, not a dime to their name. They started from rock bottom and like they're extremely hardworking and they made a lot of sacrifice. And growing up, even in different households and even in different cultural backgrounds, Andre and I were taught the same values, you know, work hard, push forward. And that's exactly how him and I got through this very, very challenging health journey. So in May 2018, Andre was experiencing some sinus issues. He was really congested. He had headaches, and we saw his family physician, and they told us that, you know, it must be seasonal allergies because Andre had really awful allergies in the past. So gave him some allergy medications, but nothing worked. In fact, things got even worse. His eyes were so swollen, it looked like he was a UFC fighter just getting out of a match, and he was experiencing even vision loss too. You know, we went to his family doctor again and she gave more meds. And then one of our friends suggested, you know what, you should see an optometrist and get his eye examined. They have fancy equipment, you know, maybe there is something else. So we did just that. On June the 26th, I remember the day so clearly. Andre had an eye exam. We went to the optometrist. Optometrist said, Andre, your optic nerve is really swollen. You need to go to the Emerge right away. I'll provide you a note, get going. So we went to the Emerge.
Whoa.
And it was like CT after CT. And then the ER doctor pulled us in a room and he's like, Andre, we completed your scans on your brain and there's tumors on the front and side of your brain. At this point, we don't know if it's cancerous, what it is, but we need to do further investigations. So our lives just stopped. We were lost for words.
Can I ask, when the doctor pulled you guys aside and told you for the first time about the tumors in his brain, what was going through your body?
Complete shock, confusion. You know, you didn't think it would ever happen to someone that you love. Like those emotions, like time stood, like it just froze up. We were lost for words. We didn't even know how to even comprehend all this stuff. what was told to us too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, forward to even present day, like our lives completely changed. From the moment we found out about the news, it just, a cancer journey is difficult, but I felt like ours was really difficult. It definitely put our love and our wedding vows to the test, and like every side effect you can imagine, my husband experienced. It was like nothing was going according to plan. So, so after a few biopsies, they diagnosed him with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. They started treatment right away, chemo and radiation. The
Mm-hmm.
chemo was so strong, it knocked him into like a comatose stage. He was like gone, Selima.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was experiencing seizures, multiple infections, like low blood count, delirium. He was not
Really?
himself. He was not the husband that I married.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, like a completely different person.
Completely different person. Like he wasn't cognitively there. It just tore me
Mm-hmm.
inside. Like you you couldn't even do anything at that time to help him or get him out of that stage, right? You were in the hands of the medical team.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I remember being by his bedside and not wanting to leave, you know, feeding him when I could, comforting his pain when I could, cleaning up after him in all areas, changing him. You know, I remember my hands being so dry and cracked from all the cleaning I was
Mm-hmm.
doing. I remember sleeping upwards in a 90-degree hospital chair.
Right.
You know, I remember, you know, freshening up in the public washrooms and taking care of him and working remotely until
Mm-hmm.
like 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to balance both. Like it's
Wow.
just, it was sad.
It just sounds like so much. And it sounds like this happened with such a little gap of time after you got married. And, you know, when I think back to your headline and the title that you mentioned, Love Conquers All, A Wife's Wedding Vows Tested with Cancer, it's like when you take those vows, I imagine that people, you know, you're committing to the vows and you understand them, but I'm sure on that day, you're not expecting something like this to be the outcome. Even though you're committed to the vows and you know what they mean and you understand them, you don't expect it, especially so early in one's marriage.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, you know, before marriage, couples probably do have that talk like, hey, would you do this if this happened? And like, you don't think about it. So you
Right.
say, yeah, of course. But when you're actually in it and doing it is a whole other thing.
It's another ball game completely.
Yeah. And I think one part that really got to me was, you know, many couples every night you say, I love you before bed. And I remember Andre being so out of it and
Mm-hmm.
completely, you know, not there. And I remember saying, you know, I love you. And then, you know, right before bed, and he's like, didn't even respond. He didn't even know who I was. It just broke, it just broke me. But now though, I can say that I don't take those I love you from him like for granted. Like I cherish those.
Yeah. Yeah, you must have been so strong and such a pillar of strength at the time. And I know that you talked about, okay, physically my hands were cracked and you know, all these different things happened to me, you know, and I experienced all of this and it was exhausting and didn't have a lot of control in terms of helping him get out of this. Like you had to rely on what the medical team and the doctors were guiding and sharing with you and how they supported and, you know, carried his treatment forward. But to be in that vulnerable state by your husband's side and him not recognizing you and not being able to exchange the thing that is something so important for you, like the I love yous and holding up the hands. I can't imagine what that would have been like for you.
It was it was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how exhausted and how difficult things were, I made a vow and we worked
Mm-hmm.
so hard to get to that point in our lives to be together that I made sure I would give everything I possibly could. You know, I was raised too, like, you know, to be fighters, to push through challenges, through sickness
Mm-hmm.
and through health, through
Right.
good times and through bad. So every day I chose to stand by my word. Every day I chose to love him. Eventually, Andre woke up from the coma state and further treatment started. And there was a whole bunch of rounds of chemo and things afterwards and infections. But like it was life changing for sure. And my perspective on life has changed a lot too throughout the journey.
Of course. It also seems like, you're very committed. You were very clear, like, this is my vow. We worked so hard to get to this place to be married. Like, this is my marriage. We're going to stay married. Like, you were really making sure that your husband stuck around and you were going to do everything that you could to make sure that that happened. Did it also seem like part of your life was on hold?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like everything was on pause. I paused everything, work, all our plans. I steered everything and put all my attention towards taking care of him. And that includes even my care for myself. I learned quickly that I needed to take care of myself in order to take care of Andre. But I put that on hold too. That was difficult. And it was mainly me too. I felt like you mentioned control. Like in the beginning, I felt like I was taking a lot on, and I chose to do that because there were so many things out of my control. But taking care of Andre, that's the only thing that I could control, that I could do. Many friends and family members, they offered to help, but my mind was programmed that like I needed to take care of him. It won't be the same. They're not going to be good enough. They're not going to do it the way I wanted it to. And letting go of that control and asking for help was extremely difficult for me. And I had to, though, because I was running on fumes.
Right. At the time, did you recognize this theme of control and perhaps even denial that might have come up for you when you talked to me about you were pretty much with your husband around the clock, it sounds like, to the 24/7 cycle, and people are offering to help, and in your mind, you're like, they're just not going to be able to do it like I am. Like, I'm going to do this to perfection. But any part of you recognizes that there might have been some sort of denial, like this idea of, if it's done my way, this is the thing I can control, so it's nothing else is in my hands. And maybe the denial is, I guess what I'm asking is kind of like anxiety in disguise, like not willing to see how big the issue is, or convincing yourself that maybe it's manageable or it's doable, or, well, I got a handle on it, I can make it better. Like, did any of that go through your mind?
It did, but probably in a disguise form, right?
Yeah.
Like in my mind was just control. Like I needed to do everything that I could. And like and also I think I felt guilt in the beginning too. Like I had to stand by my vow. I had to own up to my wife title. I made a promise to his family that I would take care of their son, their brother, their uncle. I was feeling I was letting everybody down. I felt like it was my fault. Like I should have pushed him harder to lose weight, to exercise, to live a healthier lifestyle, push harder. And all those things, plus like the control, it just spiraled me into, in a mindset that I didn't think I would ever get to at all.
Right. Did you feel like on the outside you were kind of putting on a facade of I'm in control? And because I know you mentioned that you were torn on the inside, like even when you heard the news and everything that you share about how you were handling and trying to take control of the situation, do you feel like what you were showing yourself to be on the outside was different than what you were experiencing on the inside?
Yes, you are so right when you say that. I was putting up a front. I felt I had to be that person to be strong for him, for his family, to be positive. But inside it was quite the opposite. Seeing your high school sweetheart in pain and suffering tore me up inside. I felt defeated some days. And, there are days where I was just crying in silence. I didn't want to show him that because I wanted him to be strong. I wanted to be strong for him. So that also took a toll on me.
Of course.
Putting up a front every day. Don't worry, things will be okay. Reminding him of all the things I should be reminding myself.
Right. Yeah. And what kind of worry thoughts did you have?
Oh, gosh. The constant what if came into my mind all the time. What if this chemo is not going to work? What if radiation? What if this? And I even experience that sometimes to this day where it's, Andre has an off day, or like, I'm feeling a little bit tired today. The immediate thing that I think of is, oh no, is it his cancer? Is he relapsed? Is it creeping up again? Like I can't help think that sometimes after going through what we've been through, like
Mm-hmm.
he fought a fight. I mean, he experienced every side effect you can imagine. And for me to even think that we would have to go back into the hospital and live that
Mm-hmm.
journey again, it frightens me.
Of
Scares the crap out of
course.
me.
I mean, I can't imagine what you had to witness when you talked about every possible side effect that could have possibly been for someone to experience, that he experienced all of them. I know you listed so many, but just even him being in the comatose state and the seizures and, you know, not being responsive to you and all of the pain and agony that he was in. I can only imagine it was so lonely and terrifying of a process.
It was. I would say, yeah, it was lonely. I mean, I did have a lot of support from my friends reminding me of things, and family giving me words of encouragement. But when you're in the thick of all
Mm-hmm.
it, even when you explain it, no one's going to really understand unless they're in your shoes, unless they see, unless you're doing it yourself, unless you're changing your spouse, unless you're feeding him and being his health advocate and doing all that. Like, me telling you is just not, it doesn't even touch the surface.
Right.
So yeah, I did feel alone because no one could really 100% relate.
Yeah, for sure. And advocating for your loved one is so hard to do sometimes because sometimes we're so caught up in emotion and we want the best and we have to kind of pay
Mm.
attention to our reactions and our demands and what our expectations are, and while still keeping a neutral stance to support the loved one, right? Our loved one. So I can only imagine how many different emotions that you were going
Mm-hmm.
through, and it sounds like from everything that you've explained to now, there were impacts on all levels of your well-being: emotional, mental, physical. Are you able to unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, like physically, I was telling you, like my hands were cracked, from cleaning
Yeah.
all, constantly washing and the hand sanitizer. I didn't shower for days. I was severely sleep deprived, especially in the beginning when I wasn't asking for any help. So I was sleeping in those 90-degree wooden chairs. Emotionally, as I mentioned, I was fine on the outside, positive, but inside I was torn. And then mentally too, like your mind is such a powerful thing, and it can do incredible things, but it can be quite the opposite. It can damage you mentally and physically too. So like my anxiety intensified so much, like that
Mm-hmm.
constant worry, that constant like unpleasant thoughts, paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
I would be lying to you if I told you my cancer journey like didn't affect me mentally. It definitely did, for sure.
Of course. Right. And, you know, let's talk about that. How has your untold story, your witnessing of this journey of witnessing your husband's journey, battling for his life, battling through cancer, how has that affected your mental health, or how did it affect your mental health back then?
It did, and I'm sharing with you today that it still does sometimes, and that anxiety is there, like that constant thought of, will the cancer come back, or
Mm-hmm.
is he going to relapse, or is this another side effect from the cancer? Like those nagging thoughts were very damaging during the time, but I've learned to cope, and I've learned to be better at shifting my perspective on things.
Right.
And even in my upbringing, like my parents didn't really ever talk about mental health. It wasn't even a thing. And I, pre-cancer, didn't even think it was a thing either. Then when you're in all of it, in the thick of all this, it's a thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I learned to control.
Right. Yeah. Like everything you knew about mental health was so different once you were faced with the situation.
Exactly, exactly. And even like self care was something that I put on the sidelines too. But then I was told, that oxygen mask statement where you hear on airplanes, you put the oxygen mask on yourself
Mm-hmm.
first if there's an emergency, and then others.
Yeah.
That was completely foreign to me. That was like, when I heard that, I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But When I took that advice
Right.
and when I actually put that oxygen mask on me,
Mm-hmm.
it made a huge difference. I finally, asked for help. My father-in-law came in and helped me take care of Andre so then I can go and
Mm-hmm.
take a shower, a proper shower. I can lay in a bed for a few hours and sleep, and I
Mm-hmm.
learned to balance taking
Mm-hmm.
care of Andre,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, like allowing me to recharge. And then I also learned to be a little bit more assertive and I ended up getting a fold out chair and I could sleep, lying down rather than in 90 degrees. So my perspectives in situations and changing that helps me cope. And it's a constant thing that I'm working on even to this day where, when days aren't well, it's so easy for us to spiral down and think what else is going to come or what could be possibly worse than this. You need to almost, or I learned
Yeah,
to
those
like
doom
stop in
thoughts.
the tracks and just, yes, and just, find one positive
Mm-hmm.
thing to break out of that funk and just being appreciative of things, no matter how small or big, it makes a huge difference. And that's what also helped us too, just being appreciative of such little things.
Right. Yeah. I'm so glad that you were able to get someone to explain that analogy to you about the oxygen mask when flying on airplanes, and the mask needs to go on yourself first before you help someone else. I talk about that in the therapy room quite often, but I'm so glad because it sounds like your self-care was like you checked out of self-care and it was not a priority. It was not even in your vocab when you were explaining about all the different things that you were doing to support your husband, Andre. Can you tell us a little bit about, at what point, your self-care, it was on hold, right? So how did your self-care reemerge? What did you start doing?
Oh, so some things that I did was trust, trust others and letting go of
Mm-hmm.
control. So asking for help when my
Mm-hmm.
family was able to
Okay.
come in and like tag me out, I was able to shower and sleep and then reminding
Mm-hmm.
myself that it's okay that I can take 30 minutes to go for a walk and get some supplies or whatever that we need. And it's okay because Andre is in the hospital. He is in good hands. If there was an emergency that was to occur, he's in good hands. He's with the medical team, right? So those things like allow me to not feel so guilty when I did do some self-care things
Right.
for myself.
And reminding yourself of the reality of what is around you and what you are surrounded by and how your husband, will get the supports even if you're not there for a moment, and that the hospital is actually encouraging you to get rest and to focus on some things that are important for you as well. I'm so glad that you were able to give yourself those reminders at
Yes.
some point.
Yeah. And you spoke about the what is, and that actually really, really helped me when it came to shifting my perspectives. Those negative thoughts would come across my mind. And like one of those things, actually, I remember someone telling me, focus
Mm-hmm.
on the what is, the present, rather than the what ifs, because, worrying
Yes.
so much in
Yes.
the future, they may not
Right.
even come. So why are you wasting your energy, your mental energy, where you don't have a lot of energy to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
On that, right?
I'm so glad that again, you were able to then focus on your own mental well being and you were able to take away these little goodness nuggets that could help you get through. It's so essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Mary, in the therapy room, I often find that individuals are usually in, one of three places when I get to see them. So sometimes people are just getting started, or they're in the middle of their journey, or they're looking back at their story, or they're looking back while, trying to figure out how to take their next step forward and or build a new chapter in their life. For yourself, what part of the journey do you think that you're in? Would you say that you are looking back, or are you in the middle? Are you getting started?
Mm. I would say I'm in transitioning from the middle to looking back. Having the opportunity to even speak to you in today and reflecting on the journey has been very therapeutic. And I'm uncovering a lot of emotions that things
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't think of and that I experienced. Like I never had time to really reflect and
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, yeah, you did do that and you did go through that.
Yeah.
And I feel like on I feel like Andre and I are at a point
Uh-huh.
now where we can like move forward and we're ready to start the next chapter in our lives, which includes talking about our journey, like what I'm doing today, and somehow maybe inspire others to like push forward and to try to keep a strong mental perspective on situations, in any way that they
Mm-hmm.
can. And I think I would say I'm about like one or two steps away from the looking back stage.
So close. That's awesome. And I think you started to talk about this. So I'd like to pick your
Mhm.
brain a little bit about this. So, what do you want to remember about the process of your healing journey? I mean, I know this was your journey witnessing your husband's cancer journey and his ailing health, but I still see this as a journey of your own as well, right? So, what do you want to remember about this process of your healing?
Very good question. Things that I've taken away from this is
Mm-hmm.
just your mind is a powerful thing. And I know I already had said that, but there's the way that you
Mm-hmm.
change your viewpoint on a situation really, really, really makes a difference. So, focus on facts. My friend told me that, focus on the facts, Mary. Like you are thinking about these results that may be negative or positive, but
Mm-hmm.
like you don't even know until you hear from the doctors. Stop making your own conclusions. Focus on the actual numbers, focusing on like one day at a time, one moment at a time, instead of planning like months out. And like that can be intimidating and overwhelming. And then I think the last thing that has helped me heal, or that I often look back to when I have a negative thought, is my dad's reminder. I remember calling him and just bawling and just saying like, this happened and this happened. And he's like, Mary, like, is it important? Is it really a big deal? Or like, if you want to make it a big deal, it's going to be a big deal. And is it a big deal? Because sometimes I would just overreact to the most
Mm-hmm.
smallest things, but I really just needed to take a moment and pause and just be like, okay, is it really important? Is it worth me spending my mental energy on? Because like I mentioned, my energy was running low all over. So I need to be very selective on what I advocated for, what I said, what I did, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those are the things I think has really helped me and is still currently helping me as we go through this journey together, Andre and I.
Right. Definitely, these are excellent things to remember about your process as you phase into looking back and, you know, journeying together through whatever shows up next for you and Andre. Absolutely. So, Mary, you may have started to give me some hints and tips already from everything that you've been expressing and telling. But I'm curious about what would you say that you're grateful for with encountering this journey of your untold story?
Whoa, where do I even start?
Anywhere you like.
The amount of love we felt throughout this journey is unimaginable. Like, we had prayers from all over the world from family members and friends. So, if I break it down, it really is
Mm-hmm.
about four huge things that I'm grateful for. First one, family and friends, right? They were there
Mm-hmm.
every step of the way, checking in, offering words of encouragement, groceries, gas cards, and just even our parents making the decision to come over to Canada and start from rock bottom. I'm extremely grateful for, because we're in
Mm-hmm.
Canada where these things are covered. His chemo bags cost thousands of dollars. And if we were in America, we would be
Mm-hmm.
bankrupt. And then being in Canada, we've had access to really incredible hospitals like Sunnybrook and Princess Margaret. They say the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. One of our nurses said this, but it also takes the same logic applies to treating a cancer patient. It takes a whole community to treat a cancer patient. So we're fortunate to have like outstanding medical team to help. So we had doctors. There was a doctor that visited Andre every day.
Mm-hmm.
We had nurse practitioners that were so thorough. We had nurses that taught me so much. Dietitians. At one point, Andre couldn't even consume
Mm-hmm.
500 calories a day. There was a physio who was learning, like teaching him how to walk again and again and again. And then even social workers and art therapists checking in, offering support, housekeeping, like them telling me words of encouragement. You don't understand. All these people played a huge role with even just those small gestures. To the stem cell donor, I'm grateful for that. Through organizations like Canadian Blood Services, this complete stranger was able to register and donate his stem cells, completely unrelated, 10 out of 10 match, but he or she saved my husband's life. And the last person, even though I talk about this whole journey and like how I have helped him, my husband Andre, I'm grateful for him. He tells me all the time how appreciative he is for the things that I've done. But let me tell you that he's helped me through this journey. He endured a lot of pain and suffering and heartache. It was awful, but not for a single moment did he give up or want to give up on himself or on life. He fought, so hard for him and for us. So I looked at him every day and admired his strength. And then that's what actually gave me strength and fueled me.
Right. It's so beautiful. You both fought for each other to get through this. And, you mentioned the 10 out of 10 match for the donor. That seems so rare. And I don't know enough about the stem cell process and how those matches work. But that 10 out of 10 match, that sounds like a bonus blessing. So I'm curious, did you get to meet the donor before the procedure or after the procedure? Like, how does that part work?
So through Canadian Blood Services, you can decide to donate your blood. And then you can also decide to sign up for stem cell donation. So this person just swabbed, and then through the swab, they put you in this database. And when a cancer patient or a patient needs a stem cell donation, they kind of match you, and they do this. I don't know how they do it, but they match you. And then in Andre's case, it was 10 out of 10, and it was a complete stranger. We did test internally like his sister, but it wasn't as of a match than this complete stranger. So no, we didn't get to meet the person prior to, and we won't get to meet the person until 2 years after because of their policies. But I'm happy to say that 2-year mark is coming up very soon in June this year. So maybe we'll be able to meet this person.
Yay! That's great.
Show them something, but I don't even know what to get someone who saved my husband's life.
I know. I don't know what the gifts would be for that, but I'm sure that you're going to come up with something that's heartfelt and personable, because that's just such a unique experience, right?
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. So, Mary, what's your key message to the listeners of the show?
I would say that choose to be strong, choose to be resilient. I chose every day to stand by my vow. I chose to be strong. I chose to change my mindset. I chose to be there through it all with my husband. Choose to be grateful and choose to change your perspective on things to help you cope better. And if you fall down 7 times, get up 8. And no matter how things may appear, it does work out some ways, shape, or form, and just keep pushing forward.
Amazing. That sounds great. So now this has me curious about what is your game changer inspiration that's close to you that reflects your untold story? Is there like a book or a quote or something that speaks to you?
I would say everything that I had just said comes from the quote, I believe, from Bob Marley. And it says, "You never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice." So, and I would add into that, like, being strong is a choice, and you can choose everything that you do. You have a choice, and just, choose to be good, choose to be positive, make those choices.
Right. That sounds like such a great inspirational thing to keep in mind. I think choice is important. I always also share with people about how even when there's no 2 good options, even in those 2 options, we still have a choice.
Agree.
And even if it's not that great of a choice, it's still a choice that we make. So we make the most of it and we do our best, knowing it's the best that we have.
Exactly. And it's a choice in one step forward towards something else.
Exactly. 100% agreed. Now tell me, what is a cause or organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you would like to give a shout out to?
First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to the stem cell donor through Canadian Blood Services. They do such incredible things. The amount of blood transfusions Andre had to go through was well over 100, I'd say.
Wow.
So I'm so truly grateful for all those donors that set time aside to donate blood to help Andre, that I even myself now am decided to also give back and donate and help in ways and give back. And then I would also say the medical team at Sunnybrook and the medical team at Princess Margaret. They've just been incredible.
Right. Both of those hospitals were your pillars for support.
Definitely.
The medical teams, that's where they were. So Mary, if people would like to connect with you, I am certain that there are others out there who've had a story where they've had to witness a difficult journey of their loved one go through some of the most atrocious things that you've described today. And if someone wants to connect with you, how can they do that? How are you findable?
I am on Instagram, and that's Mary Volunteero. And then you can also email me as well at Mary_Vol@outlook.com.
Mary_Vol, VOL?
Yes.
At outlook.com?
You got it.
Okay. And for Instagram, at Mary Volunteero, your first and last name?
You got it.
All right. Guess what, Mary?
What?
You just dared yourself to share. Congratulations.
Oh my.
How was this experience for you?
Amazing. That was so crazy. I would actually encourage a lot of people to do this. You have time to reflect on how you feel and your mental health, and you can actually feel proud of the hardships that you have gone through and celebrate, milestone moments and your achievements as well. So I feel very blessed and fortunate and grateful to be on this podcast and sharing my story to everybody.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being so authentic and even just sharing this part of the experience with me. That's so fantastic. And I really would like to just express heaps and heaps of gratitude for your deep and personal sharing today. This willingness to go there, that's not an easy thing to do. And you did it so seamlessly. And you see, you are an example of how much of a person's truth you don't know, that isn't told or isn't known to another. And your sharing, I'm certain, is going to help so many people.
Oh, thank you, Salima. It is true. Everybody has a story. And I would echo what Salima says, share it and you'll be so surprised on how you feel afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And Mary, you and I know each other previously a little bit, and we might have had some personal conversations in the past. And even today, I am learning and have learned a story and the big impact that it has had on your life that I never knew more than just Mary's husband is unwell and she's focusing on that right now. That was what I knew. So this speaks to the intention of this podcast, that we all have an untold story. And even when we tell it at times, there is so much more underneath. And today, you have changed that for yourself. And I know that there is more than just one person that's inspired by it, because I'm also inspired by it too.
Thank you, Salima.
Okay, Mary. Thank you for being a part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.